Hello, and welcome to ImpactoAZ, a podcast dedicated to centering Latin voices on the important issues of the day. I'm your host, Jonathan Higuera, and I'm here along with my co-host, Juan Rodriguez, our executive producer. He's also our Midwest connection and a longtime political staffer who's worked for many congressmen and women, as well as on presidential campaigns. Welcome, Juan.
Hello.
We both have the pleasure of being here today with our guest, who is a environmental expert, climate change policy expert, and someone that we knew from back in our days in Washington, D.C. And he's now relocated, as we have as well. And we're so happy to have Mark Magaña with us today.
Thanks, Jonathan. It's great to be here. It's great to be out in the West in the Rocky Mountains with y'all.
Okay. Mark is the president and CEO of GreenLatinos, which has a broad charge and covers a lot of areas in terms of policy and advocacy. And I'm going to let Mark tell us a little bit more about his organization. It's what it does, what it's accomplished, and where he sees it going. Mark?
Thanks, Jonathan. I think uh, Green Latinos was really an effort to make sure that we have a network of Latinos who work on these issues, whether it's climate justice or clean air or clean transportation, clean energy, access to public lands, ocean, clean water, and to be able to um, work together better, to be able to be resourced, increasingly resourced, to be able to do the work, and then to be able to advocate together. And all of it starts with knowing each other and building relationships and building trust so that we can each, bring in what, the skills, the resources, the access, the information that we uniquely have to the table to be able to help each other succeed in our policy functions. We've done, we started doing a lot of federal work. And so passage of big ticket items like the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which provide billions and billions of dollars in climate reduction money, a lot of which has been stripped by this administration in the last 2 years, and other efforts to be able to provide clean water, protect public lands, both federally and in states. We have increased our work in the states, where we have opened up in the last 7 years. We've opened up Colorado offices, California, Texas, Illinois, New Mexico, and now this year, excited to have opened up Arizona.
Oh,
Um,
yay.
and so that's been great. And our intention is to open up 4 more new state programs in the next 3 years.
Beautiful. All to be advocates on these climate and environmental issues that you're talking about, right?
To be the convener, to be a support system for the communities and the organizations that are doing the work in the states, to be a convener, to be a resource intermediary, to bring more resources into the state, and then to be an advocacy coordinator so that we can really be more effective both in the work that we're doing in our neighborhoods on the front lines, but also be more effective holistically in the state and federally.
Okay. Now, on these issues, you mentioned there's many different ones that you mentioned, but are there some that rise to the top in terms of priority, or are they all priorities? And how do you choose what to spend your time on so that these neighborhoods and communities that you're talking about benefit the most?
Yeah. A lot of times when we're working in states, it depends. It's conversations with the in the neighborhoods, and in many, what's important in Phoenix is different than what's important in Tucson, and that's true. Very true in Texas when you talk about the different cities that are in very different situations, or California, or
Or
Illinois.
Denver? Yeah.
Yeah, Denver relative to the Western Slope or other areas. So for us, it is having the conversations with the community and then figuring out what are their priorities, what are their needs, and being able to see how we can work together to resource those projects to come together and then to advocate together on them. And so for like in Arizona, we're doing work in Tucson where it is a lot about the high rates on utilities that are really cutting into the pocketbooks of people who are really less and less able to afford air conditioning
Right,
or clean
right.
water. And
Or have
that,
any disposable income left after their
on top
paycheck
of
goes
that,
to pay these utilities and these gas bills,
right,
right?
hundreds, like, $200, $300, $400 out of your pocketbook at one bite is just too much. And so there is extreme heat issues, there's water issues, but really in the end, it comes down to pocketbook issues.
Mhm. Hmm, that's a beautiful thing. And when you say help them get resourced, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe they have some resources to share. Do you do do you have kind of federal funding or some kind of way you can help get these resources into communities?
So in the best of times, when the federal administration is supportive of our end goals, there and they're we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which had billions of dollars in support for this type of work, and the bipartisan infrastructure law, which had a lot of money for water infrastructure, where we have federal grants that we pass through to communities. In Arizona, for instance, it is working on tree landscape, being able to have shade trees, which is so
Yeah.
important. So it's not,
Shade is a commodity here for
yes,
sure. Yes.
the desert island heat zones of the cement. And so that's being able to take larger sums of money from federal government or for a big funder like the Bezos Earth Fund, and being able to break that into smaller pieces that invest in the communities.
Okay. But you did mention prior, you said that this administration has really chipped into those funds. Have they actually stripped it away? Are they threatening to strip it away? Has there been a reduction already? What's the status of that?
There have been plenty of organizations who have had their federal grants stripped away. Federal grants that have gone to serve purposes, important purposes in their communities. Um, when the administration first came in, they froze almost all of the IRA funds for several months until the courts overruled that. And so we're under the protection of the courts right now, who are saying you can't just unilaterally strip these grants that have been legally funded and legally by law, by Congress created. And so we're still under the court's protection, and hope to continue that way.
And by the way, I just want to throw in here that although we're called ImpactoAZ for a reason, we started this here in Arizona. We are interested in issues beyond Arizona. We care about what's going on across the country, the Southwest in particular. So what you're doing there in Boulder, Colorado, and in those states you mentioned is of deep interest to us here on this podcast. Juan has brought in some wonderful guests who've given us some great information on what's going on in the Midwest. So just wanted to throw that out there because a lot of people think we only do Arizona. Granted, a lot of our guests have been kind of Arizona focused, but we try and reach out nationally and regionally when possible as well too. So uh, that's it. Anyway, we also like our guests to uh, share with our viewers just a little bit about their origin story so they get a sense of who's doing the talking here and where they got their knowledge base and what helped them become the person they are today and the jobs they have today. So tell us a little bit about your origin story, Mark. Like, where were you born? Where were you raised? Where did you
Very
go to
cool.
school? Anything that you think helped were markers in your life that
I
led
think
you
it's
down this path.
I think it's always very important to be able to share with people where they are, where they come from, what motivates them, and to learn that from people. Um, My grandparents immigrated from Mexico, from Guadalajara area. They came through Texas, and both sides eventually ended up in Illinois. I was born in Chicago, and my dad was in the Navy, and we moved out to California eventually. And I grew up in LA area, and then went to college out there, and then after college moved out to DC, where I spent several decades with you guys for part of that,
Mhm.
um, working for Latino civil rights organizations like NALEO, working for on the Hill for a couple of members of Congress and congressional leadership, and then working in the Clinton administration at HHS Legislative Affairs, Department of Health and Human Services, and then at White House Legislative Affairs, where I was special assistant to the president for White House Legislative Affairs. And really, that origin story taught me a lot about what they call sausage making, how in the end, what goes into the final product, and how it gets created and how laws are passed and how the good, the bad, and the ugly things that feed into the reality of what it takes for a complicated process to move a piece of legislation, to move regulation, to move an idea from concept into, funded. And so that's always been interesting to me. And
And you didn't come away completely jaded from that process, it sounds like. You found the good along with the bad. So
I did
congrats to you on
I
that.
I did come away completely jaded, but then I came back and found the good. So yeah, it is difficult to escape becoming jaded, but then you're
Yes.
able to crawl back. And for me, I opened up my own lobbying firm and consulting firm.
Mhm.
And what brought me into the environmental movement was in 2008, Congress was taking up its very first effort to pass a climate bill. It was called Cap and Trade, Waxman-Markey, ACEs, and it was really an effort to see if we could get Congress to move on something on a big bill. And I got hired as a consultant to help move Latino constituency to support this effort. And so I created in 2008 the National Latino Coalition on Climate Change.
Mhm.
And that was, like I said, a legislative effort to support a piece of legislation. That bill died in 2010 in the Senate. And really, at that moment, I had to figure out what do I want to continue working on this issue area? It was intriguing. It's so important. And
Mhm.
what really changed everything for me was in 2012, my first child was born, my daughter Sol, and we rushed her to California to see my mother, who was dying of leukemia in the hospital. And at 3 weeks, we got her to see my mother and to hold her and to bless her and to tell her she'd always watch over her. And she held on. And a couple days later, she passed, but she got to see her only grandchild at that
Oh,
time.
lovely. Yes.
And that was the moment, seeing her promise that she'd watch over her future, where I knew that I had to do environmental climate work full time. I knew that the climate crisis would be the biggest issue that would upend my now two children's life. Sol Olivia, who's now 13, and Javier Alejandro, who's now 11.
Oh, I have
And
an Alejandro too. Huh.
hey,
Hey, yes.
and so that commitment my mom made to my daughter and my commitment to my mother. The leukemia was associated with industrial pollutant benzene,
Hmm. Hmm.
which was she grew up in South Deering, in Chicago, and that ran rampant there.
Uh-huh.
And so, in honor of my mom's life and in honor of my children's future, really created GreenLatinos at that moment to be the national network to take Latinos who work in this issue area, no matter where they work, pull them out of their silos, out of
Uh-huh.
being isolated, and feel that sense of familia, that there's a hub to go
Uh-huh.
to. where they can get resourced, get the support, get that convening, and come together and be much more effective together. And so
Thank you
it's
for
been,
sharing that story.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's been 18 years since
Hmm.
2008. We celebrated our quinceañera 3 years
Hmm.
ago in
Hmm.
DC and had a great party and really looking forward to the next 15 years of this work.
That's a beautiful, tragic, a little it's sad too that you lost your mom. Sorry about that, but also a beautiful story and how you used it to motivate you to create this organization. And we're all benefiting from it. Juan, do you want to jump in? Do you have something you want to ask as well?
I like Mark mentioned earlier how Green Latinos acts as a convener for uh, projects and events, and I think that's always been missing from different Latino type organizations. Uh, and I think that's very important that a community in Arizona has the ability to connect with a community in Chicago or LA. But sometimes because of the work they're doing, they don't get around to doing that. And can you talk a little bit some of the events that you've had and what you'll be doing in the future for future events?
Oh man, Juan, you nailed it. Uh, Number one, when it comes to convening, it's both in the digital environment, but it's also in person. And it's done in states, localities and states, and nationally. So let's start with digital. A lot of ways that we help to bring people together is by subject matter. If you work on climate and clean air, we bring people together across the country that work on that. Or if you work on oceans, or if you work on clean water, or public lands, or clean transportation, to be able to find other people that work on similar issues that have information and resources that can be helpful. And then there's in person, which is really vital to our community. It's hard to build relationships online. And so being able to build our state programs have been very helpful on being able to build in person relationships within states or within cities. But um, what has been very effective on a national level is our Green Latinos National Summit that we hold every year. And we are working to finalize having our national summit the second week in November, just after election, in Tucson, Arizona.
Hmm.
And so we're very excited to be able to be with the amazing champions and leaders in Tucson who have taken on this issue and have really been leaders on this issue for years, and have become mayors and congress people and superintendents and really led that charge. And in honor of Congressman Grijalva as well and his legacy, uh, being able to celebrate together. Hopefully, it'll be post-election will be a celebration that people who believe in what we believe in, people who want to support the environment, have been elected, and that we can move forward in that manner. So
That's
that's an
interesting
exciting
that you
being able to
mentioned.
come together in Tucson.
That's beautiful. That's interesting that you mentioned the late Congressman Grijalva, because that really is his legacy, I think, was environmental work and public lands protection and fending off mining. That seems to be what he'll go down in history remembered for. So that's good, great that you mentioned that, and it's fitting that it's in Tucson. Um, so, but I also kind of feel like there was a time when it came to the environment, we didn't always call it climate change, although they were talking about climate change in the 90s as well. But being told, or this little sense that, I'm sorry, have you lost me?
You were
You're
breaking
back.
you were breaking up
Oh,
there for
okay,
a bit. I think you
okay,
might be back now.
okay, all right. There was a time I got the sense, and this was maybe a decade or two, a few decades ago, where the environment and Latinos were not considered the same issue, right? We have our own issues. We're worried about education. We're worried about voting rights and representation. We're worried about the economy and the jobs. And so we kind of got painted into a corner as not being as environmentally concerned, but it's all melded now. That script, if it ever was a script, has flipped. It seems like that now Latinos are going, we know what climate change is all about. We know what climate justice is all about. And it's really impacting our families and our way of life. Have you noticed that change over time, Mark? I think when we first met you, you worked for a Congressman McDermott, right? And
Yep.
wasn't he a big environmental advocate as well? Is that also maybe part of your awakening?
And he was a doctor, and he and from Seattle, Washington, where the environment's really high importance over there, and rain and those issues. And so, yeah, it was important. He was working towards universal health care. And so when we looked at things from a perspective of some of our top tier issues that affect us now when it comes to jobs or the economy or healthcare or education. All of those are affected by the climate crisis and the climate change. Our healthcare, what's in the air, asthma rates, the heat, all of these things are so important, and we know in our communities, our children's health is, what drives a lot of these actions. And then jobs, we need to be able to maintain clean energy jobs of the future versus looking at trying to keep jobs from the past. But what was interesting, Jonathan, was that I remember when I first formally got involved in the environment, and I looked back and tried to find kind of my origin point for being involved and interested. And I looked back and I thought, I may have not gotten a formal education on the environment, but I remember learning on the back of a chancla to close the fridge, to save the food, to reuse, to repurpose, to fix something, to eat every part of the animal, to not waste anything. And so we were the original cultural conservationists, because of need, but also because of culture. Even when we got maybe more income, we still didn't waste anything. We didn't change the meat we used because we could afford maybe a better piece of meat. We still used the tripas. We still used the sesos. We still use the lengua. We honor it. And that doesn't change. But in the same way, we still, find ways to get every bit of, anything out of toothpaste out of the toothpaste container and not waste any water. And all these come from our tias and our abuelas, and they're second nature. Like, my kids will ask me, why do you do that? Why do you wash out a Ziploc bag and reuse it? We can afford, Costco sells them by the hundreds, but there's no way I'm gonna have it be one use. So these issues, while we may not be formal environmentalists, we are the original conservationists.
Yeah. And we're actually becoming formal climatologists, I think, right?
Yes.
Are we seeing more of our youth maybe go into the fields like that? I don't.
The environmental, both undergrad and graduate fields, are really oversubscribed, where that field almost didn't exist when I was going to school. Now, this generation sees the importance of it. They understand what they're facing, and it has really become, like you said, uh, uh, a lot of people are going into that field, which means right now it's hard to get jobs.
I see. I know here in Arizona we have a lot of public lands, and I've always been an avid fisherman and camper. And my fellow Latinos from Arizona, I know plenty of them who are out there at those national parks, at those state campgrounds, doing their thing. Yet I don't always. I wonder how involved they get with our Arizona Game and Fish. I'm always looking to see how many rangers we have and how many of our folks work for the National Forest. I feel a little bit of disparity there when I think about how many of us are out there enjoying the outdoors and taking advantage of all those things. But that's just a anecdotal observation. I really don't
But
know.
it's anecdotally, it's things that you see. If it's a lot of the emphasis that we've had is being able to get to a green space within 10 minutes. Because for our communities, we definitely overutilize the parks for parties, quinceañeras, birthdays, etc. Where if there's a table and a barbecue and maybe a cover, we're there at
We're there.
7 in the morning reserving that thing with the balloons and the piñata and todo. And so when it comes to access, the important thing for us is how local is it? And can all the familia get there? And can we get all the food and everything there by car? And so if you pull out a little bit and then get to the national parks or the refuges or other things where it may not be as accessible and there may not be as many features. There may not be barbecues. There may not be covers. There may not be as many tables. And so that you start to see less and less usage. And you also, like you said, Jonathan, we are underrepresented when it comes to the federal, the rangers and, the fish and wildlife authorities. And so to be able to see more people that look like us might make those uniforms less intimidating and more friendly and be able to say, okay, this is a space for me. It may be harder to get to, not as easy as the local parks, but it's worth it. And last thing I'll say about that was this. My dad invested in a VW camper van. And for vacations, we went to national parks. We went all across the Southwest. And it was just an amazing, low cost way of having a fantastic vacation together. And so he also was highly influential on me appreciating natural conservation.
Right, right. Beautiful. And I wouldn't be from Arizona if I didn't ask a question about water. And the fact that you're in Boulder, Colorado is good because that is where a heavy part of the snowpack that we rely on for Colorado River water is. I'm not sure how much your organization has delved into that issue, but the states are right now divvying up the water. It's been a challenge. There's always bumps in the road. Um, but can you tie that issue? Tell us how it's going there in terms of the snowpack and water and how that impacts our communities as well. Why we should be aware of this issue and paying attention to it.
Yeah. Uh, there's so there's so many reasons why we need to pay attention to this. Number one, the snowpack, and Juan can attest to this, in Colorado has been devastating. Not only for the economy, the ski economy, the outdoor economy, which take a big hit, and will take another big hit next year because people didn't see many opportunities to have great snow to be able to go skiing. It was very slushy. A lot of it was man-made. And so that hurts a big percentage of the industry. So number one, that's jobs. And then number two, it is water. We depend on water in for not just drinking and not just all the other uses of it, but if you think about it, a lot of our energy comes from hydroelectric. And hydroelectric requires that the water level is at a certain height. And when that water goes below that certain height, those hydroelectric turbines cannot run. And then you don't have electricity for Las Vegas. You don't have electricity for communities. And we are at that level where it is below the turbines. And so they may have to let out other dams to have an infusion of water to run hydro at home, to have electricity in many of our communities. That's the level we're at right now. And it also is drought level where we need to be very conscious about our water usage. But for all these things, we need to quickly address the climate crisis. This is not going away. It's not reversing on its own. And so we need to be able to really address those issues that are day to day, and
Okay,
that hike up our costs.
absolutely. Juan, I'm going to give you a pause for you, but if not, I have another question because we don't always have people who can answer these kind of questions on our podcast.
Well, I'll be real quick. And Mark was talking about the snowpack here in Colorado. I live 45 minutes from Mark, but I can just walk out my front lawn, look to the right, and there's Horsetooth Mountain. It's a peak at 7,200 feet. Uh, and I can see other mountains, the whole range. And when you drive down I-25, and on the front range, uh, you always look at the mountains, and people here are obsessed with the snowpack, no matter what time of year. And it's been atrocious this year. And you worry, it's like, oh my God, this is really bad because it's not just going to affect people in Colorado; it's going to affect communities everywhere. But I want to go back real quick to what Mark was saying earlier and you and Mark were talking about funding, about grants being cut off by the federal government. Uh, I've worked for different nonprofits over the years, and one of my biggest concerns and something I would mention to nonprofits is you can't get all your money from the federal government. You got to diversify where your money's coming from. Very little of my clients would listen to me, and they would go and apply for federal grants and occasionally another grant here and there. We're at the point now where you have organizations don't have a guarantee about their money coming in. You might get it, and then right before it comes in, somebody flags it somewhere, up the chain. What end rounds can community organizations do? Are states stepping in? Are foundations bumping it up? What are you and others? And it's not just environmental groups; it's education groups, it's labor. What can we do, and what is being done?
Well, you mentioned a couple of those already, but diversification is vital. And it's difficult for nonprofits right now, not just because of the federal pullback, because there has been an overall pullback from foundations. And in many states as well, a pullback as the urgency grows, the demand for where we put the money, federal money, public money, philanthropical money, goes more into immediate needs of the community, immediate water needs, immediate food needs, immediate paying utilities needs. Like, what are the kitchen table issues that are going to prevent someone from being homeless? And so we really have seen that being able to diversify, being able to look to states, and like, for instance, Texas just passed a Texas Water Fund, $25 billion over 25 years to invest in their water infrastructure because they see what's happening, and they know that in order to both run their agriculture industry as well as their energy industry, they need that water to be able to do that, as well as like AI, the future industries, which they are welcoming. These are high water intense industries that they have. And so we need to be able to make the investments now, and make sure that our community is being rightfully invested. So also look to corporate investment. Look to additional foundations who you may not have looked to before. And so for us, it's being able to diversify and look at where the industry is going, look at where the issue is taking you, and then see where the community's needs are.
Thank you.
Mark, before you go, I want you to opine a little bit using your extensive Washington experience and what you're doing now, a little bit. If you can share what you think is going on with this Trump administration. As you know, he cut the wind farm projects over there in the Northeast. There seems to be, he let the electric vehicle credits expire, thus giving consumers less reason to buy an electric vehicle. At the same time, they seem to be pushing us towards back to oil, back to using fossil fuels. And now we have this big mess in the Strait of Hormuz and with Iran. What is the end game of this administration? Because all that has impacts climatology wise as well. What is going on with this administration? Are we trying to address climate change or is there something else at play here?
We know that what drives this president is his vengefulness, and he has certain sectors that he really doesn't like, whether that's immigrants or LGBTQ or women or environmentalists. And one of the reasons he holds this vengeance against the environmentalists is because he felt that when he was a developer most of his career, that environmentalists stopped him from doing the buildings or that he wanted to do without having the environmental checks on them. Or like in Scotland at his Scotland golf course, there was windmills adjacent to that, and he didn't like the look of it. And so now he is going after these windmills off the coast that have already been invested in. The money's already been spent. The energy is needed. And he is trying to stop them unilaterally, which is a waste of economic activity and job killer just unilaterally. And fortunately, the courts are stopping him. And so there is no end game as far as like his philosophical policy difference. The difference is that he really has um, a vengeance against the sector, and that's where it lies. And so being able to withstand that, what it's costing him is that his activities, his policy actions, his trying to keep utilizing coal and keep utilizing oil and gas is costing consumers more money. And it's hitting their pocketbooks. And he doesn't have an answer for that. He doesn't have an answer for the affordability crisis. And that's where it's going to affect him and the elections.
And these alternative energy sources, they would be really good for our community. I'm just thinking here, wouldn't they? I mean, because aren't our asthma rates, for example, of our children and other environmental and other health issues created by the amount of carbon dioxide
Yeah.
that's being released? And,
Latino kids are 40% more likely to die of asthma than non-Latino kids.
oh, wow.
We are living in those communities. I grew up next to three freeways in LA. It's the 405, the 605, and the 22. And in the morning, we'd listen to the weather report, but we'd also get the air quality index. And for almost every day, they'd say the air quality is too poor for children and the elderly to exert themselves outside. We'd never listen to that. And
Right.
so we'd go outside and play, but we'd have to take emergency asthma inhaler breaks when the kids started having, asthma attacks. And we'd have to know where the closest house was if it got worse. And so for us, clean energy is the quickest to put up, it's the most affordable, and it really does allow our communities to live a healthy existence and in their communities. So it makes complete sense.
Okay. Well, I've exhausted my questions at this point, but is there any final thoughts that you'd like to have, or Juan, if you have anything you'd like to say, and then we can wrap this podcast up. And thank you so much, Mark. This has been a wonderful show. We've really got some good information here.
Thank you,
Final
Mark.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think the final thoughts are, you know, all of us are who we are because of our ancestors, because of the sacrifice of our parents and our grandparents, whether that's immigrating, whether that is holding down 2, 3 jobs, whatever sacrifice they made day and night to be able to make sure that we had a better quality of life. We now find ourselves in a position where we are going to need to make the extra effort and the extra sacrifice to make our next generation, our kids, our grandkids' lives better. And it is dependent on us to be able to do that. We're in a documentary moment right now where we are the first generation to see the worst effects of the climate crisis, and we're the last generation to be able to do anything about it. This is it. It depends on us. And so we want our children to be able to look at those documentaries and say, what did you do when you had a chance? Did you stand up? Did you march? Did you face the leadership? And we want to be able to say, mijo, mija, I was there and you were on my shoulders and we won. So this is our moment. Our ancestors have had their moment and they've risen up to it. This is our moment to make sure that we are doing the same. And I know the Latino community, like no other community, can rise up and meet the moment, especially when it comes to our children. So I look forward to doing that together. Thank you.
All right. Well put, Mark. Thank you for that call to action. And I hope we all
And one more
keep
thing, Mark.
doing
One more thing. Could you give us your website and any socials?
You're the best one.
that. Keep us on track.
GreenLatinos.org. And please sign up for membership. It is free up to whatever you're able to pay. There's a lot of benefits as far as information. And if you are in the field, please join us, sign up for our newsletters, and then sign up for our social media. It's Green Latinos across the board, whether that's Insta or X or others. And follow us and be part of the solution on behalf of the next generation. And if you're young, be part of the solution where you're the leadership on this. So thanks, everyone.
Well said. And with that, we'd like to conclude our podcast for ImpactoAZ. If you liked what you heard today, this type of content, please subscribe and follow our channel so we can continue giving you this type of content. With that, I'd like to thank our guests again and bid everybody a good day.